Welcome to this panel discussion on community radio. And in recent years, community radio has been expanding or spreading rapidly across Asia. The first countries to introduce community radio in Asia were Sri Lanka and the Philippines, but it's now spread to Nepal, lately to India, also Thailand, Indonesia, and many other countries across Asia. But the models of community radio across Asia differ from country to country depending on the political situation, legislation situation, and a lot of other things. And we have with us today a panel of community radio practitioners and experts. Some of them are also pioneers of community radio in the Philippines. And we have, for example, Father Francis Lucas, who has been involved with the community-based radio for over 2 decades now. Michael David from Sri Lanka was involved with perhaps Asia's first community-based radio experiment, Mahali Community Radio in Sri Lanka. And Evelyn Agato is really a public service broadcaster who is masquerading as a community radio practitioner at the moment, who is from Radio Philippines and also working with community radio in Mindanao. And we have Sonia Radgawal from Malaysia, who has been trying to establish community radio in Malaysia with a lot of obstacles on the way. So let's start off by asking the question, what is really community radio? How would you describe community radio? Because there are so many arguments and definitions of community radio.
Community radio is people, because there is no people, no ethnic groupings, there will be no community radio as it is, because I feel that community broadcasting is sort of a narrow casting system of broadcasting because we are focused on one community. So to me, community radio is people.
Why do we want to find out what community radio is? Basically, we want to find out what community radio is. We want to define it when there's some practical purpose. So the answer to that depends on for what practical purpose are you asking this question. For instance, if it is a matter of transmission, there may be people who would like to define community radio as a radio station which broadcasts to X number of people or X number of kilometers or X number of transmitting per. Or if it's more of a wider definition, you may look at the social and geographical aspects. Any radio station which relates to people socially and geographically, both together at the same time, could be called community radio. Or if it's for funding, a funding agency may have its own criteria. If it's the government may have its own criteria. If it's the Association of Community Broadcasters, they may have their own criteria. So it largely differs.
Your community radio is run by the Catholic Church.
Well, not really, because we started the community radio was initiated by a leader or some leaders of the Catholic Church. But it was the people who really supported that radio. And the community radio towards community and radio, and because in the early years of our community radio, we saw that mass communication became massive communication. That means you marginalize all the rest except the owners of media, and the power became larger and larger, and the communication was one way instead of two way. And community, talk of communion. So, you get people together. So we thought of coming up with a community radio, the people. But you need the radio to also augment the different communions of different communities. So I see community radio as those two. Therefore, you need participation. You cannot just have it yourself. And even tell broadcasters, you are just mouthpieces of the community. And usually when you start with the farmers, they are afraid of the stick, the microphone. But after a while, they want to hold on to it. In Tagalog, we say galit sa bakal. They're so angry with the stick that you want to keep speaking to it. After a while, when they mythologize media, so we like to hear ourselves.
Well, I'd like to sort of pick up on what David was saying about the reasons why you would want to define it. And I think that if we're looking at the Asian region, one of the key reasons why we want to define community radio is because if we don't do it, the governments tend to be doing it for us. And that has been problematic if we look in Thailand, if we look in Indonesia, even in Taiwan, Hong Kong, South Korea, where governments have been taking a very narrow definition of community radio, often a definition of community radio which is allowing commercial broadcasters to take over what was previously community-based radio, community radio, for commercial purposes. So I think that in terms of definitions of community radio, I think that one thing that's very important there is it's not for profit, which doesn't mean that it can't be revenue generating.
In my case, it's not important to me whether community radio is being defined or not. What is important to me, it is going on and it is helping the people. Let the people define it for themselves in their own locality. I don't want to be very specific in the definition that community radio is sort, because there are different settings in different areas. So defining community radio station is limiting what people could do in their community. So I don't really, I'm not buying the idea of having an actual definition of a community radio station. Let the people emerge their own definition. Let them give their own definition of what they're doing.